Oh, hello everyone. Today we're going to go over Hackfist. And what is Hackfist? So Hackfist is a dive comp that uses a higher sustain and burst damage of Doomfist compared to other dive heroes, as well as a utility of Sombra to look for short, fast engages where both DPS work together to get kills or force out resources. I will be covering Hackfist in the context of going against Brawl comps, which Hackfist is a favorable matchup over. Against more traditional dive comps and poke comps, Hackfist is very vulnerable because Hackfist loses to range poke a lot of the time, as well as the map control that traditional dive comps provide. But against Brawl, those drawbacks don't really exist as much, so Hackfist is a favorable matchup over Brawl comps. So let's talk about the heroes in Hackfist. For tanks, you'll usually have Winston Diva. Ball is useful in some situations, such as if there's little high ground, or there are wider sightlines, like on Busan Sanctuary. And Zarya is a possible option, but I don't like Double Bubble in general because of the nerfs, and disengaging is an essential part of this comp. For DPS, obviously, Sombra, the hack, Doomfist is the fist, duh. And supports are going to be Ana. You could go Brig, it's okay, but Doomfist has a large enough hitbox that he's easy to hit with Ana shots. And when you're going against Brawl, obviously you're not going against like a dive hero. Brig might be useful if they're running something like Tracer and your Ana's being really annoyed by the Tracer, but usually Diva should be enough to peel for her. But Break you usually don't need. Like Mercy's pretty bad in Hackfist, obviously. Nothing to really pocket. Doomfist, like you don't really want to fly in with your Doomfist. So Lucio is also a really good option. And Lucio's like the main option. And why? Because you can speed, you can rotate your backline to an aggressive position, you can disengage your Ana if needed, or if they're trying to like run over your Ana, you can just like speed her out, and he also provides a lot of mid-fight utility, which makes him a good pick as well. Like, which is another reason that makes him a good pick. So what is the problem? Brawl has high sustain, which means that it can hold a position for a long time, but is incredibly dependent on its resources like shields, defense matrix, cooldowns to both sustain and attack. Meanwhile, dive heroes like Winston and Doomfist have quick charging cooldowns, so it is not as dependent on resources as Brawl. However, dive comps that utilize Tracer have a weak matchup against Brawl. They have to be close to the enemy, but they are incredibly squishy. Brawl can blow up Tracer easily, hence why many teams have resorted to not running Tracer, so they run double poke like Ash Echo to counter Brawl. But there is another solution. And the solution is Doomfist. But why? First, Doomfist is a high HP pool, and especially when you consider his shields, he generates a lot of shields against brawls that are really clumped up together. So he's harder to kill than Tracer, and mid fights, Doomfist can stay in for longer than Tracer. Doomfist also has a quick cooldown cycle, which, even though they are the key part of his kit, actually works in his favor in this case because Doomfist can disengage, wait for his cooldowns to come back, and then disengage in like the next in like 6 or 7 seconds after he disengages. So Doomfist charges his cooldowns incredibly quickly. Doomfist also can use high ground because of uppercut, which is very good against Brawl. And Doomfist has good burst damage, which forces enemy teams to respect him, unlike something like the Tracer, which, even though she does have decent burst damage, you can Matrix it, you can stun her, you can freeze her, a lot of things, but Doomfist is harder because Doomfist is harder to like counter because his one-shot capability forces enemy teams to respect him and use cooldowns just to peel him off. And even if you do peel him off, the damage might have already been done because boom, he just punches one of your backliners and you lost the fight. So let's go over Sombra and why Sombra. Because Brawl is very ability based, which plays perfectly into Sombra because Sombra disables those abilities. And EMP is insane, but especially against Brawl because it plays clumped together. Sombra also has a really easy escape option, and she can play at longer ranges than heroes like Tracer and can easily escape from the fight if needed. And range damage. Sombra has a longer fall off range than like Tracer, which means that Sombra can play outside of stun range, outside of even like Kree's fall off range. Maybe I think they're the same, but I'm not sure. But Sombra can still play like outside Kree's of a fall off range and keep poking the enemy still, and doesn't have to like be next to the enemy to do damage, unlike Tracer. And Doomfist's weaknesses disappear against Brawl basically because like Doomfist is actually weak against poke and dive comps that can poke him out while he is setting up, and that's actually his main weakness. But Brawl has terrible poke and terrible map control, which means that Doomfist can basically use almost the entire map just to set up. Like the entire map is available for him to stage from. You can use high ground, you can use flanks, whatever. Unlike poke or dive comps, which may be controlling those high grounds or controlling those flanks. And as Doomfist will have the support of 2 dive tanks and a Sombra, CC abilities are much less impactful against him. You can't just throw stuns if there's a Winston D.Va eating the stuns and Sombra shooting at you and disabling your stun in the first place. And then, like, suddenly you don't have anything against Doomfist. So, what are the steps to a fight in Hackfist? First, you want to roll out. You want to set up your backline in a secure position and have your Sombra take initial positions behind the enemy. Then you want to stage, which means that you want to set up your Winston and Doomfist behind the enemy on high ground if possible, and D.Va should help if needed, or she can stage on her own and take aggressive angles. Third, you engage with your tanks and DPS from multiple angles, using the threat of Doomfist and Sombra to secure kills or force out cooldowns. And if the fight's conclusive, you clean it up. Or if the fight's inconclusive, you can disengage and can repeat until like you've won the fight. Or you have to reset. And finally, you snowball because this comp can set up positions ahead of the objective or on the objective or like close to the objective, I mean. And you can plan ultimates for next fight to win the fight easily. This comp has insane snowball potential. Once you win a fight, you can like easily win the next few fights if you know what you're doing. So the first step is to rotate your backline to secure position where they can't reach you and just like rush you down. Generally, everyone except your Sombra will play stack during this phase, and this is to prevent the enemy from using their mobile or ranged heroes to poke you out. And you want to prioritize setting your high backline on high ground if all possible, so that the Brawl team can't reach it that easily. After your backline is in a good position, you can want your Winston and Doomfist to take positions behind the enemy and on high ground. Your Sombra also needs to be set up on an angle where she has access to the backline. But but like your D.Va also has a special role in this phase. Your D.Va will often stay closer to your backline to DM any lethal poke so Ana can heal properly and to provide an angle from the front. But often the enemy will send their D.Va or someone like Tracer or Echo to clear your Winston or Doomfist, in which case you want to help contest them and clear them off the angle. So in this case, D.Va's trying to contest the Doomfist, so you come in, you just duel the D.Va, and the 2v1 should be like in your favor. But certain ultimates also allow you to skip staging certain heroes and directly start the engage. So EMP you can just int in, but Sombra should still scout for Lucio to prevent a defensive beat. And in any case, you should still have your backline in a good position, as Brawl still has good damage reliability, so you do want the heals still. And Nano or Primal Winston, Winston can directly jump in, but Sombra and Doomfist should still be in a good position to engage. Nano and Primal Winston, you can often nano into a Primaling Winston, which like if you're having trouble staging in the first place, let's say you're playing into like a choke, then you can use both Nano and Primal to help the team set up those positions. So during the Nano, your Doomfist will mainly set up instead of just inting in, and then eventually during the Primal, your Doomfist will go in, or like somewhere along those lines. And you often it's better to Nano Doomfist, especially when your Winston already has Primal to engage, because and even then like Nano Doomfist can be enough for your Winston to just int in because the Nano Doomfist is very tanky and he has to be dealt first before your Winston usually. And Doomfist should still be in a good position at the start of the Nano, and Sombra should be set up as well. And beat, you can go for a beat engage and stop staging, but only once you've forced out enough resources from the enemy, so it's more of a mid-fight ability. So, and also you should try to clear any enemy that's split apart from your team if possible. So, in this case, there's a Creed, there's a Diva, so you're gonna send your Winston, Diva, Sombra, and Doomfist just to clear them and force them back to their team. And Hackfist is very good at punishing that, so clearing those angles might even get you a pick, so you might kill a Doomfist or Diva here, if you're lucky. So let's go over the engage, and before the fight, it is helpful to decide whether the engage should be a soft or hard engage. And in a soft engage, you just save movement cooldowns to escape, you prioritize living. The goal is to force out resources and leave the team in a better situation for the next engage. So you want to get better positions, maybe you can rotate your backline during the soft engage, or you can farm ultimates. And in a hard engage, you commit those cooldowns and you prioritize kills. Like you commit those movement cooldowns. You jump in, you use all three Doomfist abilities, and the goal is to win or cripple the enemy so they have no hope of winning the fight. And when in doubt, you want to soft engage and decide whether to commit during the mid fight. And sometimes, especially when breaking through difficult defenses like chokes, you can decide to farm an opening ultimate such as Nano, but it can also be Prime or even EMP if you're close to that, before engaging. And this strategy is becoming very common, especially among like top level teams. And in true neutral situations where enemy starts with zero ult charge, it is very hard to counter. So consider like these things when like deciding to soft or hard engage. So ultimates, like certain ultimates or combos, allow you to hard engage earlier than usual. So Nano or EMP can allow you to engage basically immediately. Primal can hard engage after, like you can jump in. Like often, like if you have Primal, like you still need to like stage a bit. You can't just jump in and take a lot of poke and get your Primal forced out early because it can just stun you, chain stun you, and kill you before you even get to pop the Primal. So you can hard engage after baiting out or disabling CC cooldowns with like your shield, or they're throwing your Doomfist, or like they get hacked, or in conjunction with another ultimate, like even Doomfist or Diva ults might be enough. And beat engages you can try, but you only have a few seconds to get value. So I don't recommend like using beat as a way to like hard engage immediately. It's more of like a mid fight thing or like a defensive ult. And Self-Destruct or Meteor Strike are ultimates that can help finish inconclusive fights, but they can't initiate fights on their own, except if the enemy's making a huge error, like a positional error. And if you're the team set up in very good staging positions, high ground like behind the enemy are ideal, with full HP and with cooldowns available, you can go often secure eliminations very easily. You can just go in with a hard engage. And you can just like go in, drop from high ground, but still you can use your movement cooldowns to chase down kills and stuff. And this is especially true on maps like Gibraltar and Dorado, where there is a lot of high ground to use. Still, one of the reasons you stage is so you can engage without committing cooldowns, and you want to keep that in mind. And you also consider enemy resources. And if the enemy has used a lot of resources, they're in a worse position to punish you for engaging. You want to look for in more, and if it's used early, then you can consider going all in because Doomfist can now get easy picks. You're also going to consider CC cooldowns, and getting them out of the way is a huge plus. Self-sustain and escape cooldowns are also something to look out for. So Kree no roll, Mei no ice block, and if they're running Moira for some reason, Moira no fade. And if they're used early, you can focus on like you can try to like focus the enemy and focus the enemy who has used that cooldown to self-sustain because they can't use it anymore, obviously. And shield or DM is not that important to force out, but it's good for Ana to land nades. And it's not an exact science knowing when to soft or hard engage. It requires experience and a lot of failure, probably, but like a lot of like trial and error. But it's a valuable skill even outside like the Hackfist comp. Like if you're running traditional dive comps or even like Brawl comps, it's something to know and something to look out for. So to initiate the fight, you first want to decide on a main target just before the engage starts. And I'll go over like next line. But you always want to have Winston enter the fight first. You don't want to have like Doomfist enter the fight first. And Doomfist should not be the one going in first or setting the tempo. Doomfist wants to be the one following up, not the one like initiating. And Diva might consider flying in first if she is positioned a long distance away from the enemy because Winston's jump is faster than Diva's boosters. But that's just a micro thing. And when selecting a target, don't make it complicated. Choose the easy target. So you don't want to focus tanks because they're hard to kill. They are it's not because they are not valuable kills, but because they're tanks, they're hard to kill, obviously, so you're not gonna focus Rhino or Diva, especially without sustained damage. DPS are easier to kill, but brawly DPS like Mei or Kree can survive more burst damage than most other DPS and have cooldowns to like sustain themselves or escape. But if those cooldowns are used or they are out of position, they can be easy targets. And you don't really want to bother with Lucio unless you can land a hack on him where he is low HP. Moira is a common switch and she is very finicky to kill, but no Immor means that her teammates are very vulnerable, so you probably would focus on DPS or if you hack the Lucio, then the Lucio. And Baptiste or Ana are squishy targets that are easy to kill, but don't tunnel vision on them if they're out of reach. Doomfist has good burst damage, so if you get a clean kill, then who cares about their healing? Like burst damage like cancels the healing. Like there's no healing a target that's just gonna be one shot. It's just like Widow. And Doomfist should initiate shortly after Winston engages, while Sombra should uncloak and immediately look for a hack. Doomfist can use all three cooldowns in a hard engage, but otherwise, like you want to save at least one cooldown to disengage. So it's like from high ground, you gotta look to slam, uppercut, then punch to disengage, or escape back to high ground. Or from low ground, or if you're dropping from high ground to look for a punch, then you punch, uppercut, and slam. Those are like the basic combos of Doomfist. And Sombra should either look to hack the main target that was decided like just before the engage, if they have self-sustain or escape cooldowns mainly. So Kree, Mei, or Lucio. And if Bap's your target, then you can hacking Bap's also good because you disable the Immor and you force his teammates to use like a lot of cooldowns just to save him because he is like a really like important player in their team. Like the flex support, it's like probably like the most devastating to lose early on. But like if like they don't have those cooldowns, then hacking the target's gonna be less valuable. So you have options. You can either hack Bap if he still has Immor, and like often Bap will be your main target. Like most often Bap will be your like primary target, but if like Bap's out of reach, then Sombra can still look for a hack and disable that Immor, and that would be value by itself. You can also hack Kree if he has not used Flashbang, so you can prevent that from being used. And Diva is also an okay target if Doomfist is initiating with Slam first, because Uppercut will require like primary fire to follow up and is easily like boopable. And like Doomfist is like really boopable if with booster, so you can like Diva can mess up Doomfist's engage by just booping him all over the place. And like same with Lucio, so Lucio can also be like a target that can sometimes be valuable, but usually you won't hack Lucio because unless like he's your main target. And Ryan is a mediocre target unless you're setting up some nade. And most of the time, it's better to hack Diva if you want to look for an aggressive nade. But like hack priority, like it's usually gonna be the main target. But otherwise, like just be creative and just consider your team fight plan. So if the plan's land a nade, you're gonna hack Diva or Ryan. If your plan otherwise, like if your plan is to like if you know they still have Immort, then you can hack Bap, or if you know that the stun has been a problem, then you can hack Kree. But just be creative and just consider your team's plan, and you'll be all right. And as you can see, Lucio can play passively for poke or play aggressively for mid-fight impact. So are you a Moth or a Li Zhangong? Like, so to speak. Like, what's your Lucio's playstyle? And different Lucios will be, like, willing to be less or more aggressive depending on playstyle. Both are really valid options, but like, you also have to consider whether your engage is a soft or hard engage. And like, if it's a soft engage, then you can look to like just poke, but if it's a hard engage, then you often want to like help the team with the mid fight because you are looking to finish the fight and you do want like that impact. So you can boop the enemy off high ground, you can boop tanks away so that your Ana can land a nade, Or like if like something like a diva's trying to like boop your Doomfist, and you just boop the diva away from your Doomfist. Or you could boop the enemy player away from their team for easy focus fire, like the main target, or boop like the hacked target away to make it more difficult to peel. Or you could just like directly follow up on a dive, like be like someone who's also focusing the main target with your Doomfist and Sombra and Winston and Diva as well. And Ana is the key to winning neutral fights because her nade can clutch out fights that would otherwise take multiple engages to win. So you want to look for nades during mid fights, and you don't want to use it like while your team is still staging because it is easily eaten by something like a diva or blocked by a Rhine. And sleep should be used as a defensive tool because like it is very easy to have your target wake up amid all the mid fight damage. And usually use it to defend against something like a diva who's trying to like fly at you for some reason during the mid fight or to catch you off guard. And like how you continue or complete a fight, so like during the late stages of the mid fight, it depends on what happens after the first few seconds of that mid fight. So if you fail to get a pick, you're gonna use ults to continue the fight, like Nano, Primal, EMP, or Beat, or to secure kills like Meteor Strike or Self Destruct. More on that later. Or you could switch the main target depending on the cooldowns used. Like, let's say Bap's jumping all over the place, but hey, you see the Kree use flashbang, so let's go on Kree instead. Or you could also go for an aggressive mid-fight rotation by your Ana to try and land a nade, so you can also continue to fight that way. Or you can attempt to disengage and stabilize for a next engage, which is also a good option a lot of the time if you don't have like if you don't see a way to like get a pick without recharging cooldowns. And if you succeeded in getting a pick, like every pick is different. So if you kill reflect support, you can try to complete the fight, but sometimes the best option is to disengage, recharge some cooldowns, and then finish the fight the next engage because you killed the flex support. They can still use cooldowns to punish you or ultimates, but if you play slow, like then any damage, like any like further damage is gonna be lethal. So you just want to play slow for like that damage. And if you kill the main support, then you should move up your backline because enemy can't rush your backline anymore. But you might still have to disengage, but you can look for a hard engage after because the enemy can't kite. That's one of like that's also a factor I forgot to like mention, but it is an important factor and usually after like killing the main support. And if you kill the off tank or DPS, then you can attempt to like kill the supports because there's less peel and CC to protect them. Or if necessary, you can disengage the aggressive positions because they can't really poke out your aggressive staging anymore. And if you kill the main tank, then you should look for a nade, attempt to stay in the fight because there's nothing to absorb your aggression. Like any like aggression is gonna make them fall. Like killing Ryan is gonna be a very valuable pick. But it is a hard pick to get, so you don't want to look for the Rhine pick immediately. And one of the great things about the Hackfist comp is its ability to snowball fights. Dive comps in general, like Hackfist, benefit immensely from being able to set up positions before the fight starts. But Hackfist also comes with powerful ultimates that are able to end fights before the enemy can even respond. And victorious warriors, as in, like paraphrasing Sun Tzu, win the fight first and then go to war. And this is exactly what you want to be doing. So, well, you want to fight. Great. What do? You set up for the next fight. You don't just like talk about your fat EMP, fat slam, whatever. Like cut that crap. Focus on planning the fight and setting up a kill box ahead of the objective, so they can't just stall and camp it. So that when the enemy try to retake, you don't have to waste time like with the staging. However, often the enemy will try to clear your kill box, so readjusting your kill box according to the enemy's movement is vital. And your Sombra has a very important job during this phase. Your Sombra wants to scout the enemy rotation so they can start adjusting like their positions as soon as possible, like your teammates can. And you should also look to plan and then use ultimates aggressively. After winning a fight, you're often in the perfect position to win the next fight quickly with ults. And why? Because you can set up positions ahead of time so that the ultimate has more impact. You can engage before the enemy has time to set up their own positions for the ultimates. And you can also mitigate the impact of the enemy ultimate. So if the enemy has like poke ultimates like Window or High Noon, you can avoid open space, engage early, scout out potential sneaky angles like Kree High Noon on the flank. And enemy has Brawl ultimates, like for example, like a Blizzard. You can maintain escape options, bait out ults, Like can engage, disengage, and use your own ults, or you can just use an EMP to like end the fight immediately. Because like if you use EMP, then they can't really use their brawls, and they have to close the distance. You can't just do it outside your Sombra's like EMP range. And the ultimates in Hackfist can be separated into two categories. So there are the opening ultimates like Nano, Primal, and EMP, which allow you to hard engage early and fight the enemy in forward positions. If you're running like Zarya, then an advantage is you can open with Grav a lot of the time because they're gonna play stack together. Even though like Diva is still gonna be a threat, so you're gonna look to hack Diva first and then Grav like later into the mid fight. And Rally can also be an opening ultimate if you're running Brig. And there's also like the utility ultimates as well, which are weaker than the opening ultimates, but and they don't allow you to open fights. So I'm talking about self-destruct, meteor strike, and beat, but they are very helpful in closing those fights. And like you'll usually combine like one from this category and one from like the this category. And effective cycling of ultimates will allow you to win easy fights. And you want to aim to use one opening ultimate for per fight. And the exception is like a Nano into Primal combo, Nano Winston into Primal, because if Winston is close to Nano, like as the fight as you're trying to plan the fight, like you see you have Nano, and like your Winston's close to like Primal, but you don't have any other ult, so your only choice might be to say, "Hey, I'm going to Nano my Winston again, and then I'm going to use that to farm the Primal," which is something that can win fights on its own. And the fight uptime will allow your Summon to farm EMP incredibly fast for the next fight. And you can also use one of or more utility ultimates to finish fights, which might be necessary if the enemy like responds with their own ults, or it's very like tough to crack defense like a choke. And the ideal situation is we use one opening ultimate and one utility ultimate per fight. So use two ults, like an ult combo. And EMP will usually win fights alone, so you don't have to use like self-destruct or meteor strike or beat to finish it, ideally. And let's go over like a hypothetical example. So first fight you're gonna try to win the neutral, and then snowball. It's gonna take the longest time, but the next fight we're gonna nano doomfist into meteor strike, which will like net you early kills if you set it up properly. And the third fight you're gonna use EMP just to win the fight, and the fourth fight you're gonna use primal, which helps separate enemies from mid fight self destruct. And the next fight, they decide to throw ults at your team, so you're gonna use beat, and then you're gonna nano Winston mid fight into like primal, and finally you're gonna EMP to win the map, and boom, you win. So if you can cycle your ults correctly, use EMP plus an ult. I mean, use EMP to win a fight alone. Use primal plus an ult. Use nano plus an ult, and just keep doing it. Then you're gonna get the easiest like fight wins ever. Like you're just gonna snowball the enemy, and that is key to like finding success on this comp. You always want to like use ults to snowball, and that will like net you a lot of success.